listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome everyone. Today I'm joined with Gary Coppola. At a young age, he became interested in martial arts, which led him to pursue studying Taoism, Eastern philosophy, and culture. This evolved into a lifelong pursuit of a variety of metaphysical practices, which he accredits to helping him overcome drug addiction and alcoholism. He has spent the past 25 years immersed in yoga, Tai-Chi, Qigong, as well as practicing Reiki, Tarot, and I Ching Divination. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good to be here.
Good to have you. Nice to meet you in person. So for those who don't know you, could you share a little background on yourself and your spiritual journey?
Sure. I got involved in martial arts at a young age, maybe 12 or so, and this was like the late 70s, so Bruce Lee was real popular, that kind of thing, and I grew up in kind of like a rough area in New Jersey. I didn't realize it at the time, but as an adult, I learned that wasn't the nicest neighborhood, I guess. But and so on and off all through my teens and even into my 20s, I would practice a different type of martial art, maybe lose interest in a couple of years as a kid would, but kind of always kept the philosophical background with it and never completely got away from it, maybe just got disgruntled or bored or pursued a different interest. And my late teens, early 20s, I was a heroin addict. And eventually I got to the point where I had enough and I was on methadone for a couple of years and cleaned up and all that. And so kind of, even in that kind of culture, I always maintained a certain mindset and spiritual connection. Like even when I was on drugs, I would still eat a reasonably healthy diet, like that kind of thing. Would still get a lot of exercise, at least if nothing else, from walking or that sort of thing. So, and then as I got older, I got more into, I'd always been into working out in one way or another. So that kind of led to different things. My interest in physical culture kind of, I was briefly like a personal trainer in the late 90s. I didn't really like the commercial gym atmosphere kind of thing, but it did lead me to yoga. And I remember I was a personal trainer, and I think I got a yoga videotape as a education thing and realized, wow, I don't really know anything. And so I really immersed myself in the yoga, and that kind of led to the introspection and meditation that goes with that. And so I've consistently practiced since the late 90s. Way back like 20 years ago, I would occasionally fill in for a yoga teacher, like when she was out of town, that sort of thing. And in the past year or so, I've been offering a weekly class, and kind of like an unconventional approach, or a little different than traditional. Like I've practiced Ashtanga and Asura, which is kind of like a Yanger, but sort of modified. And but a lot of like what I do now is not such an intense or all or nothing kind of thing. A lot of times classes are somewhat extremist, or my class, it's at Enchanted Blessings and Metaphysical shop, and a lot of the people that attend my class are actually intimidated by a yoga studio atmosphere. People have actually said they called up and had no idea what it was talking about and were afraid to go, or figure they'd be out of place or self-conscious. So it's kind of like very friendly for the uninitiated. And I find myself like in a class, I'll because I've been practicing so long, and I know you practice yoga and that sort of thing, but it's like a fine line between giving too much info or not enough, or something that you don't want to misexplaining something, like something that's second nature because you've done it so long, like with alignment or hand or foot placement,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. So that I always just put it out there to the students. Let me know if I'm confusing you or not telling you enough. But
Right, right.
yeah, that seems to, but it seems to go well and be receptive. And then, like I was saying, I dabbled in the martial arts on and off, and maybe, in fact, I actually met my late wife, Patty, through my martial arts practice because her friend owned the place where I would work out, and introduced us and all that. But maybe the past 20 years, I've been consistently immersed in Tai Chi,
Mm.
and that's just very. Yeah, I mean, I can just go on forever about the benefits of Tai Chi training and just the awareness that goes with it. And I train at Wallum Kung Fu in Knoxville, and it's very traditional. So it's actually practiced as a martial art, not just as a therapeutic exercise. And there's nothing wrong with that. And many people, that's their main reason for practicing. But it is a actual functional, practical martial art, just very difficult to learn. Like people see the slow motion stuff, and that's balance, but it's applied. It's very fast. It's actually like wrestling, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we talked a little bit about your like the martial arts and stuff. Could you share a little bit about some of the various styles of divination that you work with?
Yes, yes. I offer tarot readings. I've been doing that for quite a few years, kind of mainly for myself and friends. And then I was hanging out with people I knew. I think it was at like a new moon drum circle, and people had decks, and we were just reading for each other. And my friend overheard and was just like so impressed, and was like, "Oh, you got to come to festivals with me or read in my shop," and just kind of went with it like that. And it's just something I naturally take to. Like I had mentioned, I'm heavily into human design, and my human design profile, a 2-4 manifesting generator. The 2-4 thing is you tend to have natural skills or gifts that you don't even realize until someone else points them out to you, or to me in my case. And that's kind of how that is. And I've been consulting the I Ching for probably close to 30 years. Just usually every full moon and new moon, I would read for myself. It's like you toss 3 coins,
Mm-hmm.
and they come up in a specific configuration, and that builds each line of the hexagram. And then reading that and interpreting that, and the different translations,
Mm-hmm.
some are harder to follow than others. It's very difficult to translate Chinese. So
Right. And then their culture's coming into play too. So the way they're saying things, I remember the first
yes,
time I did this, it is auspicious too, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to really meditate on the picture that just created.
yeah, yeah. That's the thing. Like when I do readings for people, with the I Ching, you're consulting a book, but it's not just reading it because, like you said, it's so esoteric and poetic and metaphorically configured that you really kind of have to point out what that means.
Right. But it is like
Yeah.
I've used it a few times with the pennies,
Hmm.
with the coins, and I actually got a little spooked because it predicted my father's death very accurately, and it said 3 will go on a journey, 2 will return, and we all 3 drove that day, and only 2 of us came back, and I was just like, this is really literal. Like this was like, because you don't know how it's gonna play out sometimes. But it was so accurate that I only consult it if I'm really like ready for the answer that it's going to give me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And you'll see that, or I'll see that sometimes. like I said, I do like every new moon and full
Mm-hmm.
moon, and sometimes you'll get the same thing 3 times in a
Right.
row, and the chances of that, there's like 64 possible combinations, and
Right.
the variables, and then you also get changing lines where it'll change something else, which has a meaning of the line itself, and
Mm.
then also will carry over into a different hexagram. So there's that to consider. So it's not cut and dry, yes or no. Like you don't even ask a yes or no question. Like certain forms of divination, you
Right.
do, like a pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
And an interesting side note, I don't get responses from a pendulum, and I know other people who say that too. It's like it just doesn't. I don't get anything, and I know several people who say that or who have limited things, which it's just me or my energy or maybe the
Maybe it's just
groundedness.
not
Right.
what your style of divination, like because you do the tarot. It's funny. My husband is really good with the pendulum. I don't use it as much, but every now and then I'll be like, "Will you go ask your pendulum this?" Because I really like it works wonderful for him. It's just like we have these specific tools that we really connect with, and it's like our thing. And then some people are really great at this other thing, but I've heard other people that aren't. The pendulum's just not
Yes.
for them. But
Right. I know some people like that, and then I know like I know a tarot reader who lays out the card and selects them with the pendulum, like when she reads for others, which
ah,
is very impressive. And
mm-hmm.
I'm not, like you said, different things work for different people. And granted, it's nothing I pursued extensively. It's like, I'm not getting anything, and I
Right,
move
you just
on.
didn't,
It's like,
yeah.
but it's just, I just found that like interesting, and I know other people same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, with the I Ching, it's and that's the thing too with the different, depending on the translation you have. Some are incredibly long-winded and over-involved. Where I have one I like, or a couple of different books that I like, but it is, but yeah, it can be almost unnerving, or
Yeah,
yeah, without being obsessed with it. I mean, you still live your life. You don't like change everything because a card came up. It's just
right.
something to be aware of. But and that's the thing I experience too. Some people that I'll read for don't really get it. Like I literally had a lady ask me, but when am I going to die? And I'm like, well, that's not what I'm here. I'm just telling you what the energy's like now. It's I'm not.
Right. Like even with my, father's death, it didn't say he was going to
No,
die.
no,
So I,
right.
I actually pulled a tarot card too, and it was the I think it's the Ace of Coins where it's the hands with the money
Yes.
thing. And I was like, oh no, like I'm broke. This is not a good sign if I'm getting somebody handing me money from heaven here. Um, but I did, I kept trying to be like, no, it's fine. Everything's gonna be fine. But but it doesn't say, it doesn't come off like I've never drawn the death card and had someone die. You know what I mean? It's
No,
like it
no.
was a weird way of explaining it, but I kind of knew that it was just like it had to happen that day, and it wasn't like the cards are telling me this, but it's like this is in the stars,
Yeah.
and the cards are reflecting that. But
Right.
it's not
Yes.
like saying, oh, someone's going to die today. It's just, but because I had those cards, I was a little more mindful with those last moments and things like that, because I was like, well, there is that weird feeling I got from how positive that card seemed. But it ended up manifesting differently. So I think some of the cards people are scared of are
Yes.
actually not as scary as some of the, some of the other cards. But like the tower, I know everyone's
Yeah,
like
I was
terrified.
just going to say that everybody's terrified of the tower, but it's not necessarily bad. It's I usually see it as a call to take immediate action.
Mm-hmm.
Not It's not necessarily bad or good, but it's like, the tower's hit by lightning. You have to jump now. You don't sleep on it. You can't think about it.
Right.
But you have to respond or react. But yeah, certain things like death card is transformation.
Right.
There's
Alchemy
a
and
lot you can
rhythm.
read into it. It's not just the imminent doom. It's there's the
Right.
white rose. It's all that. But yeah, sometimes it's, you got to be
It's
careful
alarming.
sometimes too. Like sometimes if someone's not in the best place mentally, it's not really a good time for a reading
Right. Oh,
sometimes.
oh yeah. I'm very mindful of like if I'm already like paranoid or something. I don't touch the tarot cards if I'm paranoid.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of I've it's like a reverence, and I do hold them to like this. They're powerful and they're giving me an answer, but I don't work with them all the time. I
Yeah.
kind of prefer my little oracle cards because I like the positive affirmations and like something that gives me hope, and like I don't want my mind to go off onto some extreme thing. But I've never had a tarot reading that didn't completely line up with as far as the synchronicities and the events that happened afterwards. I mean, it's
Yeah. 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 It's almost amazing too, like from doing like a lot of readings, how it usually really does like resonate to someone to the point where it's like it consistently amazes me, even though it's something I do all the time. Just the way things just tend to be what people really do need to hear or where they're at, that kind of thing.
right. It's kind of cool because it's just all up. You don't know. You're just doing it right then and there, and it's like you're just reading what the universe is sending you in that way. It's like you're responding. You're not creating it.
No, no.
So it's almost like sometimes I don't, want to go there because I do some oracle pulls for people, and I'll
Yeah.
be like, oh, I don't know if they, but I'm like, if I pulled this, then they need to hear it, even if I don't want to tell them, what this card represents. It's not up to me to, sugarcoat certain things. I might be like, okay, don't be afraid, but
Yeah.
like be mindful of like hidden enemies, because that's what the card is saying. So,
Right. Yeah.
but they're always like really grateful. And like, even though in my mind, I'm like, oh, I wish I could turn that around.
Yeah. I wish I didn't have to tell you this, and I don't know who this is, but
Right.
yeah.
But it's important because
Yeah.
now they can be mindful going forward
Mm.
and sort of like maybe be protected or,
Yeah. Yeah. I always make it a point to tell the person, not like when they set their intention or ask their question, not to tell me. I don't
right.
want to know anything going in, just so I'm not subconsciously influenced to sugarcoat it, even if I don't
Hmm.
mean to, just to, try and console them. It's just like, this is
Right.
what it is. We can talk about it when we're done. You can tell me anything. I'll discuss it in great detail. Like every time I do a reading, I always make it a point to give the person my contact info. And it's like, you can call me next week when you wake up and say, oh no, what about this? I didn't think of it. I'll elaborate, take a picture of the spread, send it to me because I'm not going to remember. But
Right.
I definitely follow up on that kind of thing.
Right. So are you doing like past, present, future kind of readings, or what's your setup like?
Yeah, I don't really use a traditional layout. Generally, like if I do I'll do like a full 13 card spread,
Mm.
and I pull the one card. That's usually the center card that sets the tone for the whole reading. And then I kind of go in like a cross pattern and then cross that to fill in like 9 cards. And I'll also use a Leonardman deck. We're talking
Mm.
about mispronouncing. There's like 5 ways to say
Oh,
that.
oh yeah.
But and I'll do like 4 more cards with that. And the Leonardman style deck really resonated with me. I didn't even know what it was when I bought one way back, and it's like, yeah, this is just cool. I can kind of get that. It's got like the little pictures of the regular playing card
Hmm.
on each one, and some kind of artwork. And the pictures are all consistent with the numbers, but there's different theme decks. And I
Right.
especially like a La Santa Muerte Mayan death goddess kind of deck that I just saw on the artwork is just really cool. And so I'll do 4 cards, and they'll build on, and like one builds on the other, that kind of
Mm.
thing, and all that. And I do read in reverse, like some people don't, which is not right or wrong. It's just how you take it.
Right. I mean, if you're interpreting it that way, then
Yeah,
you'll still get the message. However,
yeah, and with the reversals, certain cards don't seem to change for me reversed, and certain ones do. Most of them
right.
do, but certain ones, like, I kind of get the same thing from aces or
Hmm.
certain things, especially if it's got a round thing like the world or the wheel. Well, how do you reverse a wheel? So
Right.
it's going to spin anyway. But so yeah, I kind of pull it like that, and then I do a lot of festivals and events, so people often like a 3 card spread, and then I just pull the wand and on each side. But I kind of just whatever you need to know now and as it applies to you. So I don't designate a specific meaning.
Right. Like they're able to understand
Yeah,
it.
and a
It's
lot
a,
of people do, and there's nothing wrong with that. And people just get creative. They'll do a new moon one and Mercury retrograde, which is totally cool. I mean, it's just like my way of doing it. Sometimes, like if I get a reading from someone and that's what they do, that's what I go with. So yeah, it's like
right, right. Because like
yeah,
that's their language. That's their, you
yeah,
trust the reader to
yeah, right, right.
speak their
There's
language.
certain people, especially that I have a friend. I actually like met her through like internet stuff when she lived in Washington State, and she's in Asheville now. And every now and then, if I was gonna like pick someone to read, and usually I like to have a reading from someone I don't know who doesn't know me,
Mm-hmm.
so there's no even subconscious influence. You don't even have any kind of an opinion, even if you don't want to. But with someone like that. But generally, I find that stranger thing is good. Like I always encourage people, like get your next reading from someone else. Just
Right.
like
Just to see
to,
how it's different.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I don't have that competitive thing. Like even like with beginning yoga students, my advice is always experience as many teachers as possible. See what resonates. Everybody's going to probably have something to say or helpful,
Right.
and as long as it's not something completely reckless or
Right. Out of
dangerous, but
your,
yeah,
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 yeah.
that you're not ready for. It's like don't, yeah, but
Yeah, I think it is important to have different interpretations. Like even with astrology, I encourage, I use whole house, but I encourage people, go ahead and have a Placidus, reading as well, or, focus on the natal, but maybe, look at your, solar return or what. Like it just depends on where you're at in your life. Like, and as an astrologer, I still have readings from other astrologers sometimes because it gives me a fresh way of viewing it. So my last reading was through a Placidus lens, and he had all sorts of good insightful things, and it was looking at my chart slightly different, and I don't think, oh, this is wrong.
yeah,
And I've had a Vedic reading, and my son's in Pisces in Vedic, and I'm like, oh, I could totally see this. So I think I imagine it sort of like when you look at someone and you take a light and you move it around them, they look totally different depending on where the light is hitting their face. And so as you go to these different readers and these different interpreters, they're actually looking at you. It's still you, but they see you from this different perspective. And I think it's important because sometimes we tend to look at ourselves straight on. And so then we're like, oh, I didn't notice that. But now that you say it, it makes sense. And it sort of opens us up to all sorts of new possibilities and not just be so concrete and this is who I am and this is how it is. And I love changing it up.
yeah, yeah. That's definitely helpful. Like you were saying with the different, if that was even a thing. I forget the specific type of astrology, but it did have to do with that, like with the precession of the equinoxes.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
things aren't like they were, and like you said, you have a Pisces sun in that chart, and yeah, I was just briefly reading something about that, but that's definitely it's that different perspective, or somebody does it somewhat differently, and
Right, because they're speaking to you in the language that they've mastered it in.
yeah,
And similar, so you might use a certain form of tarot, someone else might use each. It doesn't matter because as long as you've mastered that language, the information will come to you in the way that needs to come out. And so it's so cool though how it's like it takes all these different forms, but they say similar things, but they're looking at different aspects. But I'm like, wow, it's so interesting that you see that aspect, but that sounds so much like this other aspect that you didn't focus on, but you still got the same message. You know what I mean? It's very interesting. So, you were talking earlier, like how I Ching is connected to human design a little bit. Could you just slightly elaborate how it plays in?
yes, yes. Like if you're familiar with the human design chart, each energy center has different numbers, and each one of those numbers is related to an I Ching hexagram and a planet.
Mm,
So on the chart, the human design chart, on there usually, and different people put out different charts. Some don't have this, but generally on each side, there's a column that will have a the glyph for a planet.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to like the zodiac in order, and then it'll have a number next to it, which is in human design they call it a gate, and it's a I Ching hexagram.
Mm.
And then there's a decimal point, and the number after that decimal point is the line of the I Ching hexagram. So,
Ah.
like for example, I'm a 2-4 manifesting generator. That means line 2 is most prevalent, and I'm by no means an expert on human design. So but it's line 2 is most occurs the most, and then the 4 occurs second,
Okay.
and that's kind of how that is. And then another human design thing is if you're like a right angle or left angle. And again, I not an expert, but there's another juxtaposition I think starts with a 4, if I'm not mistaken. But the numbers, whether you're left or right angle, is
Mm-hmm.
based on I Ching lines. So it's like
Okay.
a right angle. If you're 1 through 3, it's a juxtaposition. If you're 4, and it's a left angle if you're 5 and 6. And I might have that backwards, but I don't think so. I just was like, we were talking about it last night in this group thing. But
So with my incarnation cross, it's right angle cross at the vessel of love. So the right is going to take it a different direct. Would that interpret different than left?
yes, I really can't elaborate in
That's okay.
detail, but it definitely does make a difference with that. I'm just learning. Like I've been studying human design for a few months, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
I've
one of
been
those things where everything you read, it's like, oh, that explains it. Yeah, I'm not crazy. It's
right.
this. It's okay. That's why I do that. That's like an example, like opportunities occur through people I'm associated with based on my
Mm-hmm.
type. And I do find that to be the case. Like when I get a job, I've met both my wives through mutual friends,
Mm-hmm.
like that kind of thing. So, or the idea that maybe I have talents or gifts that come natural to me that I take for granted or don't think about and need someone to point out that, yeah, that's a thing. Everybody doesn't do that. You're special. You're gifted. Like
Right.
even like I was saying that how long I've been doing things like yoga and even like energy healing. Like I'm a certified Reiki practitioner, but I've been doing that kind of stuff for like 20 years, just kind of like energy healing, whatever you want to call it. I didn't even have it a name. I guess it was based on old Taoist techniques that I read about, and visualizing and transmuting energy. And I took a Reiki class kind of for my own knowledge, and it's like, wow, yeah, I've been doing this
Right.
anyway. And
Yeah.
then even from practicing with people, they're like, no, you got to start doing this for people. It's like, yeah, you really do. And I would have never even thought I was qualified, capable, if experienced practitioners haven't encouraged me and said, no, absolutely, go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the other person pointing it out
It's like
is a
validating
thing.
it.
Yeah.
That's interesting too with you being Gemini rising because that is like the social butterfly kind of archetype and it's like you go into the community and you have these experiences and you're sharing and they're sharing it back so it's almost like lines up with that human design aspect.
Yeah, and it does. I do have a tendency to be like that, to just like know everybody and
Uh-huh.
to get along with people. Like I work these festivals and I just go around and talk to everybody, make friends,
It's
know so
natural for
many people
you.
from doing it where I don't even think it's a thing, and people are like, "Oh yeah, you know everybody." It's like, I guess, yeah,
It's really cool. My husband's a Gemini rising too. He's just it's like natural, and I'm just over here like super awkward, and like I have a hard time. And then I watch him, and I have a lot of Gemini rising friends, and they're just so good at immersing themselves into the group, and it's just like they know exactly what to say, and they're just embraced, and so that's a really good thing for like being in that community that you're in. It really
yeah.
lifts you
It
up.
definitely helps, and like you were saying, it's like second nature. You don't even
Mm-hmm.
think you're doing anything, or it's
Right.
But it is, it's like a gift or a skill, I guess, whatever. But it's like one of those things that just comes to you. And even with astrology, same thing. Like there's a lot of things as I learn more about astrology, and is maybe not all that long ago, a few years back, but the first time someone actually did my chart, like I just knew the very basic stuff. I didn't even know what a rising sign was at this point, but I was doing a job for this lady, and she was like close to 80 years old, and I would do like handyman work and stuff like that. I still do some of that too, and I noticed all her books and was commenting, and then we got to talking, and while I was working, she asked my birth information and did my chart. And with an affirmous, I mean, she didn't know how to send a text message.
Mm-hmm.
And so like she just looked this up in about 5 minutes and rattling all this off and wrote it all down for me with the
Mm-hmm.
little glyphs. And but that was like my first experience. And as I delved into it, a lot of things in hindsight explain things. Like for example, I have all right, Uranus and Pluto in Virgo in the fourth house, and both planets were retrograde when I was born.
Mm.
And looking that up, especially the Uranus thing, I
A
guess
little
that
chaotic.
yes, like that's why it mentioned you'd have a tendency to move a lot.
Yes, because fourth house is home.
So between 18 and 30, I probably had, you know, age wise, 18 and
Mm-hmm.
30 years old, I probably had at least 13 different apartments
Mm-hmm.
that were all like, so it was almost like moving every year, sometimes
Yeah.
more often than that, and a full house full of stuff. I had kids at a young age and was a single parent like all through my 20s. So or basically a single parent, like my ex was in the picture, but it was like me 90% of the time with the kids.
Right.
So it was like I had a 2 bedroom apartment full of stuff, including all the stuff that goes with small children that I would move on a regular basis, and it was normal to me.
Mm-hmm.
And like changing jobs too. I've been through like a lot of jobs when I was younger and that kind of thing. And
Could you talk a little bit about the Qigong and the Tai Chi and how these practices have supported you over time?
yes, the awareness that comes with it, the body mechanics, the
Mm-hmm.
movement, the breath work. Like Qigong is very literally means energy work.
Mm.
And it's very similar to yoga. Like in my yoga classes, I do a lot of Qigong exercises, standing, kind of deep breathing,
Okay.
moving, like coordinated movement with breath type of thing, and very aware of your posture. Big, and again, that's a yogic thing too, like the foot to ground contact and the
Right.
body alignment. And that's in Tai Chi, and you're taking it with you because you're moving it through it, and it carries over into everything, like your everyday life. You walk in a certain way. Like, for example, your weight's 40% on one leg, 60 on the other. So you shift, like one leg's empty, one leg's full. That's the poetic Chinese thing, like in the I Ching we were talking about earlier. But so you get that, so you're not recklessly plodding when you walk and falling onto the next foot. It's a controlled thing.
Right.
And over the years, like working on construction sites, that would actually save me from injury or accident sometimes. Like you're on uneven, rough ground. So even though you're stepping into a hole, you feel it before you put your weight down and pull
Right.
back instead of stepping in there and hurting yourself or that kind of
So
thing.
more
And
mindful just in every aspect of your life. And that
yeah,
balance carries over.
yeah, you even cultivate an awareness of feeling the movement of energy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a two-person Tai Chi exercise called push hands where two people are standing there and kind of like gently make contact with each other's like wrist and elbow and
Mm-hmm.
shift weight back and forth. So you're not like forcibly pushing the other person over, but you're reading their energy and
Right.
feeling it and kind of like trying to make them lose their balance by getting out of the way when they push, but it's very subtle and internal, and developing that feeling. You'll feel things like I've had like heavy equipment that without thinking about, I got out of the way where it would have hit me if I didn't,
Right.
and things like
Just the
that. So
subtle energy, like you could feel it coming at you.
yeah, yeah, and it's that very introspective thing. Like I've dealt with and the breath work and the
Mm-hmm.
exercise that goes with it. It's very similar to like yogic breathing, that kind of thing. And that's helped me over the years just deal with anxiety and depression and issues like that awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like you're into Kundalini, is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yes, I have some experience with that. I have friends that are Kundalini teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going through a kind of like a rough period. It was, and like even through years of having the yogic and Tai Chi practice, I did go through many years of that where I would also drink excessively.
Mm-hmm.
I was like a functioning controlled alcoholic, so I would do what I had to do, but pretty much every dinner time I'd start drinking,
Right, right.
and then wake up in the morning and practice yoga and qigong, and like every day I was very consistent and controlled, but nevertheless it wasn't a good place to be. And
Mm-hmm.
I was in like a stressful mental situation. It was during the pandemic, and my wife had passed away a year before that. She had breast cancer, and then the pandemic's there, and so I'm isolated. I'm not working. I was really dealing with like really bad anxiety issues where I'd sleep like 4 hours and then couldn't lay down. I'd have to get up. I couldn't even relax, so I had to keep moving. I couldn't do a yogic posture laying on the floor because I felt like I was suffocating. I was okay doing standing exercises, walking. And then my friends that I hadn't seen in, well, my one friend, Kathy, I hadn't seen her in at least 10, 15 years and hadn't met her husband at the time, her new husband, well, relatively new, but they came to visit coincidentally from Florida. And we go way back in Jersey, like 30 years, and used to be, would party and drink and do drugs together and that kind of thing. And then years later, they're cleaned up and is a Kundalini teacher, and I come to visit, and that really introduced me to true like meditation, to a seated meditation practice. Just by talking about it, and she's like, "Hey, you want to do a Kundalini session?" So we did, and then we were talking, and I was showing her the Qigong I did, and Tai Chi and everything, and then she introduced me to the Kirtan Kriya. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right, the Satan. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that kind of like fixed my brain with the anxiety thing,
Yeah.
and led to a developing a seat at meditation. I sit every morning for give or take 20 minutes, and at least, but just really that's the meditation practice has been absolutely life changing as far as like managing anxiety. I don't overthink anymore. I've always struggled with that overactive brain, the anxiety disorder, the bit of depression, all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found that mantras really help when my
Mm.
mind starts to take off, and we're not our thoughts, and I feel like these meditations like prove that.
Yeah.
So I replace those thoughts with a mantra that maybe one of my gurus or someone has given me for a specific thing. and
Hmm.
and with Kundalini yoga, there's so many specific, like pretty much anything that you're dealing with, you could find a practice to balance that out. But you're replacing those negative thoughts with the mantra, and
Yes.
it's almost like it tricks your mind to get off of that, and it replaces it with this really positive energy, or maybe it's a protective energy, or whatever the intention is, and it's like regulating you, and it's,
Yes.
to me, more powerful than any of the other things that I have done in the breath work. I mean, it's clearing you, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize beforehand that I was not taking like full breaths for
Mm.
like most of my life. I wasn't
Yeah.
breathing properly, and just very shallow breathing, and I feel like that can even cause anxiety sometimes. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes just being mindful, you don't even have to do the mantra. Just sitting and being mindful of the breath alone will bring you back into that tranquil, place where you can like really see, okay, this is who I really am. And this was, the anxiety, it kind of came from this situation, but I'm not the situation. I am the being that's observing the situation. And I don't know. I feel like it's almost hard to be trapped in the mind when you're doing these practices, because it's giving the thoughts somewhere to go, and now you're not hanging on to them anymore. So you're just in that true state. So I love Satnam. I love chanting Satnam to get me back into this is my true self. This is who I really am. And I can only experience that when all the other stuff fades away, and that truth is all that's left. So I'll just chant, like if I'm anxious, I'll just chant it until I'm done. So, sometimes I go in my tree and chant Satnam to my tree friend. And I imagine that the tree is just, alchemizing any of the physical sensations. And then Satnam, I chant it until it's just me.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. So my mind is fully clear. And then the tree has alchemized any of the physical things. And so I feel like I've taken my Kundalini practice, and then like I kind of make it individual, and do my own thing with it now. But it was life-changing for me.
Yeah, yeah, I kind of make stuff my own too. Like I don't really do like a traditional
Right.
Kundalini practice, but even with like you were saying, the mantras or the meditation, the type meditation I tried, like kind of like observing your thoughts, watching them come and go. That never worked for me. I would always didn't
Right.
didn't register with my mind, but having something to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what I do now is kind of like either visualizing the energy coming like out of the earth through the
Mm-hmm.
chakras, or and moving the energy through my body in a specific thing. That's common in like a popular Taoist meditation where you circulate and it's like following the chakras or
Mm-hmm.
visualizing the caduceus kind of coming through your body, or
Right.
and connecting to the earth, or seeing the energy like going through your feet and coming out of the other side of the earth and then pulling
Mm-hmm.
back up. And but yeah, it's definitely and the tree thing's very cool. I always talk about the tree of life. Just about every tradition has some sort of a tree thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
They're everywhere, of course, but yeah, like a popular or common Taoist or Qigong thing is you're standing and almost like you're hugging a tree, and you're got the roots and kind of see
Mm-hmm.
yourself like that. But it's definitely yeah, just life changing with the anxiety and all that. It's yeah, I highly recommend it to anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did a white tantra, and the guy that was partnered with me had just recovered from being a drug addict for like years and years. I mean, it was kind of interesting. I never met this guy, and he comes in, everyone's looking like gurus. He looks like a biker, and
Hmm.
but it was awesome. I really appreciated having him because we were both kind of newbies, but that was what he replaced it with. And so he would just do Kundalini yoga, and it changed his life. And like he never wanted, and I mean, he gave up cigarettes, he gave up alcohol, he gave up, hard drugs. And so you don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to,
Yeah,
it can help anybody, if you're open to it. And I don't know, I feel like it brings you to balance in all sorts of ways. And so I think so many of us are kind of seeking some kind of practice. But the cool thing is I feel like once you integrate it, it becomes your own. And then
it
you don't
does. Yeah,
necessarily have to sit at the feet of a guru all the time. You get that wisdom, and you're like, okay, I understand now. And then it's like you start making your own rituals, and you
yeah.
understand, okay, like it is in the mind, I can set intentions. I can, when I say this, I feel good, or and you start making your own practices out of it all. But it's
Yeah, I definitely make things my own and
I think they're
do it like
right.
that.
It's
And
really powerful because it's coming from you. So similar,
yeah,
like you were saying before you learned Reiki, you were already kind of doing it. And I always encourage people, especially there's certain placements in people's charts where I'm like, you've got the power in your hands when you don't necessarily need to do Reiki because you've already have it. But I think it's cool if you're going to practice it, to have like that certification to fall back on to say,
yeah, the background, it gives you credibility.
Right.
I mean, like I have that. I just recently, like I said, I've been practicing yoga since the 90s.
Right.
And I recently did a certification thing just to go somewhere. Credibility, if you teach at a facility, the insurance can cover you. But yeah, somebody, I forget what their discipline, but the teacher was like, yeah, certification basically means you paid for a class that comes with a certificate. It's not necessarily, not that there's anything wrong with it, and certain things it's good to have, and I do have them and things, but it's still the person, the practitioner, what they're actually doing.
Right. Yeah, I don't have a yoga teacher training, but I feel comfortable creating my own sequences, and I've been doing it for long enough now where I'm like, I do like to go to classes sometimes, but I can't afford that, and I don't want to have to wake up at 4 a.m. to drive to Knoxville just to, so at some point it's like I have to trust that even without this training, I was still doing the training. I just didn't pay for the certificate, but that doesn't, but I don't teach others, of course. But.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with, as long as they're getting something out of it, and you're not misrepresenting yourself. It's like you were saying with going to Knoxville. I kind of, maybe up until like this past January, I probably hadn't taken a yoga class in like 15 years, and was just compelled to do so, and had been taking various classes, and they're beneficial. I enjoy it, but like you said, it's a traffic jam. It's getting up. You got to leave like an hour and a half before the class, the way traffic is, and it got to the point where it was parking and all that. Like it's.
Right. I feel like once you get the alignment stuff down and you understand, okay, the sequencing, I need to do the left side and the right. And at some point, it's like you need to trust that you can do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to do the group energy thing. And, sometimes I really like to go to yoga class. I've got friends that teach it. And sometimes I'm like, I'm going to go to class today. It feels good. But I don't want to feel so dependent on that I have to go to a class or I won't be able to do it. So I think at some point I'm like, had to start like leaving the nest.
Right. I'm like that. Like you feel you're, like you said, dependent, or you have to make it your own and do it. And so, something I really enjoy, and that's something I got into this past year, is I guess you would call it aerial yoga or trapeze yoga.
Yeah, I have a trapeze.
It's so cool, and the way I came across it, I first wanted to try it, but was intimidated by the idea of going to a class, and even thought it would be like, well, what if it's too much, and then I'll be in class and I'll force myself to do it, even though I know better, because I don't want to look like I can't. So I didn't do that. But I found someone that taught it privately and had a package deal. You get the trapeze and 5 private lessons, and I have it in my living room now and do it all the time and absolutely love it. And
yes, it is so much fun to add it in.
It really is. Just I mean, I love doing the inversions, and I have like the the inversion stool with the cutout for your head, so it's like doing a headstand.
On my Christmas list.
That's great. And hanging from the trapeze, and then at the Kung Fu school they have the gravity inversion table.
Oh yeah.
So all that adds to it, and and even I have hip issues, so using mild arthritis, nothing horrible, but enough to limit your lunges or deep stuff, but kind of doing like warrior with the one leg propped up in the sling is
nice.
Yeah, like that sort of thing. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, as I get older, the props become more and more handy.
Yeah.
And I'm less and less, like my ego is now at a healthier place where I'm like, I don't have to make it look a certain way because I'm hypermobile. So I can do it. But
Yeah.
what I have found is, okay, now my hip's hurting for 2 weeks
Yeah,
because I
right.
looked so good
Yeah.
doing this pose. But my friend who's a yoga teacher, she was talking about the is it ahimsa, which is like do no harm,
Mm.
and that extends even to your practice of if
Yeah.
you are hurting yourself, you're harming, and that's actually not in alignment. So just because you can doesn't mean you should. And a lot of these really cool postures, these people are, spending years
Yeah.
stretching themselves a certain way. But I think I was really pushing myself a little too far,
Hmm.
I still kind of do in these classes sometimes. But now I'm like, I'm gonna put the prop down. There's no point. I'm still
Yeah.
getting the benefits
Right.
without it looking exact. So I share my practice a lot with people so that they can see, oh, it doesn't have to be. The Ashtanga yogis are really cool to
Yeah. Oh,
watch.
yeah.
It's
But
amazing to see
yeah.
what the body can do. But I don't have any desire to do that. And I still get lots of benefits from doing the more restorative or the yin yang kind of yoga.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of the population is at that same placement.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily trying to do this, okay, I'm going to wake up early every morning. And, there's a level of devotion to that. And, there's all these different paths that yoga offers. So
Right.
that's just one. But I think some people think, oh, if I'm not a devotee, and it's not a 24/7 thing, that I'm not going to be good at it. But, there's benefits from all sorts of just even the mild kind of yoga, chair yoga for the older people
Yeah.
and things like that. It really helps, your longevity over time. That's what we're looking for,
Mm.
is to feel good. So, let's explore a little bit of the feng shui and space clearing. What are some little things that people can incorporate into their lives through this practice that might help them in their day-to-day life?
Um. Yeah, with the feng shui, it's kind of like just the energy flow in your house with how things feel. Um, I know, like generally with space clearing. I mean, I'm big on like smudging and
Mm-hmm.
open the windows, go through the whole house. That's also like a new moon, full moon thing
Yep,
at
same.
least, and including the closets and all
Yes.
that, and a lot of the feng shui. I mean, that's one of those things. It's like I see it, and when it like something I like naturally took to. I that's something I've been involved with for a long time, and in some ways, it would have to do with arranging your house to be able to defend yourself as if it was a fort or
Mm.
a primitive situation where you were at risk of attack, that kind of thing. I
Okay.
mean, I guess that sort of comes from it. I mean, you can get into the directional thing,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of times it has to do with the layout of the room. So, for example, if you want to face east, but east is looking out the wall and west is
Right.
looking out the window, you look out the window. I mean, it's not like sit in the corner because the corner's in the lucky direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess like traditionally, a lot of that would have to do with natural heating. So you want the sun to come up and warm you, so you want to be facing the sun, kind of like how you would set your tent when you're camping or something
Mm.
along those lines. It's generally good. You want like a water feature in the front. You want abundance flowing to you as
Mm.
opposed to flowing away. And it's correcting energy flow too, because like we have limited leeway as to what we can do. Like you buy the house or live in the house that you can afford to rent, that's available a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times. So maybe you're at the bottom of the hill coming towards your front door, but everything else is right. So you might put something to disperse the energy. An example is like a door and window or two doors in a straight line. Don't want that energy flowing through the house, going straight through and not
Mm.
dispersing and circulating. So you might have a feature to disperse that, like even in your house, like a good sized plant, maybe a pleasantly tapestry or ceiling hanging kind of thing coming
Okay.
down to disrupt that. I was thinking of an example of a friend who moved into a condo and her front door and back door were in a straight line, and it was limited to what you can put up because that was the hallway from one room to
Right,
another. So like
right,
you couldn't just modify the place. So I'm like, well, hang this here and get a plant for over there, and
right.
that sort of thing. So a lot of it's just a balance between the traditionally you would have the bagua symbol superimposed on the house in a certain direction, but realistically your house might not be laid out like that, so it's not like, well, you got to tear down this wall and
Right. You can
build an addition
improvise.
over here. And so you work with what's there, and it should feel like a good flow. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of those things, like I was saying earlier, that maybe I can kind of feel that energy. That's, I guess, why people have me pointed out to them, because some
Mm-hmm.
people aren't really in tune to that. But so things should just flow smoothly and in a functional, practical, and pleasantly appealing way.
Right, right. Yeah, I haven't studied feng shui too much, but I love to decorate. And
Yeah,
sometimes I'll put something up and I sort of sit with it and I'm like, it's beautiful, but it's not right. And I can't tell you why it's not right.
yeah,
But I'm like, this is not the proper placement for this random item. So I almost consider myself more of a maximalist, which probably isn't very feng shui, but it's organized in a way that it
yeah.
creates harmony and balance. Make sure that if I do it to this side, then something needs to be on this other
Oh yeah,
side.
yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, the energy here is very good. The room flows nicely. Love the decor. Love the round rug. That's kind of a whole taking the edges off kind of thing.
ah,
So,
okay.
so that's even a thing. Like you kind of want to maybe round out the corners,
Mm,
but not chop them off. So you don't want that dead, stagnated space for the energy
right.
to accumulate.
So maybe put a plant in the corner or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I looked at somebody's house, and they also had some, the energy was kind of freaking them out. And if you go outside their house, there's definitely kind of like a, whether you want to call it a vortex or a energy moving through there pretty
mm-hmm.
intensely, and not bad or good, but some people take it like that. But they had stuff, but the room was just all, and an obvious feng shui thing is clutter. Well, like
Right.
declutter, whether it's good or bad, don't have unwanted things or stuff.
Yeah.
And they totally had that. There was like an unused, whatever it was, I forget, some kind of furniture thing that was clearly not usable, just shoved out of the way in the corner. Then they had the room kind of half chopped off the way the couch was left out. Then there was this giant bird cage in the corner. The bird had died like 2 years ago, but they left the cage there,
Mm,
and there was dead space behind it. So it was totally obvious to me. And I'm like, well, that's,
you gotta
if you must have that cage there, at least turn it into like a terrarium or a
right. Put
decorative
some
thing,
life in it.
not just where somebody died and you neglected it. It's like, and I mean, I consider that to be like so simply obvious, but
Right.
so it's things like that. And then you got to be careful with like mirrors and TV
Right.
screens. I mean, I don't have any mirrors in my bedroom and don't recommend TV there.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you do, cover it when you're not using it, maybe a
Mm-hmm.
nice blanket. And I mean, I do have lots of mirrors other places, especially like the one room where I always do Tai Chi. It's like
Right.
in my living room, or what most people would have as a living room, is just empty workout space with a trapeze in the middle of it. So,
Right. Because it's opening up the room as it's
yeah,
reflecting, so it can create space where there isn't space a lot of times.
yeah, the intention of it. And but you do have to be careful with mirror placement. It can
Mm-hmm.
be, well, like I'll get that if I stay in a hotel and maybe there's a mirror facing the bed. I'll just wake up because of the mirror. It's like
Yeah.
okay, and then go back to sleep. But it's but so affects the energy.
I can definitely see that because there's certain like Airbnbs or and I'm like, I
Yeah.
cannot relax in this space. I had to go home the last time because I was like, I cannot sleep here. And it was subtle, but it was just like
Yeah.
the energy was terrible, and I was like, I'm not gonna be able to relax,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I've been in a hotel and hung the blanket over the mirror just to like for sleep reasons, or
Mm-hmm.
so. Yeah, that's definitely a thing, and windows, the obvious cleanliness, clutter stuff, and that's the thing too. Like the clutter in the closet, you don't see it, but you know it's there, and
Right.
that's the thing. And I mean, I deal with that too. Like maybe I don't know, a month ago, probably 2 months ago, I had to replace my water heater, which is in a little thing off the walk-in closet. Well, to do that, I had to take down a shelf unit on the wall. So I took everything out. Okay, now's the time to clean out the closet.
Mm-hmm.
But for months now, it's just all stacked along the bedroom wall because I want to go through it before I put it back. And so intention wise, it's in progress. So it's not like neglect.
Right. You
It's
know
going
that it's
on,
good.
even
Yeah.
though I have to be moved to do it, have the time and sort everything out and all that. But
But it's still in the back of your mind, just knowing that it's there and like
oh
not
yeah,
wanting
it's
to.
right out in the open. I mean, I wake up, it's right there. It's like a pile of all kinds of stuff, but it's a work in progress. So it's like
Right.
psychologically, or at least that's what I'm calling it, and transmuting it. And
Right.
perception is everything. So you do kind of do that. But yeah, it's that stagnated stuff, and
So the house is sort of an extension of your own energy field in a lot of ways, right? Like,
yeah. That
so if
is a
it's
thing.
cluttered, it might be reflecting,
An
a
inner
cluttered
thing,
mind.
yeah,
Yeah.
like your shadow side that's just stuffed out of the way and not acknowledged almost, or you could
Right.
kind of call it that. And
It's funny because a lot of times thinking of a closet, like as it starts getting cluttered, you don't want to go through it. You go through it, you find all these like the Christmas card from 10 years ago, and
yeah,
the thing from your passed on relative that and it is so. In order to go through the clutter, you end up going through a lot of the past
yeah, dealing
that
with
has
stuff.
accumulated there, and so it's so interesting how it ends up being like, okay, well, I've made a lot of progress from this thing, and maybe I don't need to keep that
Yeah,
anymore because I don't want to keep thinking about that old thing. And it's interesting. I had a yoga teacher that said one time, if you want to change the world, start with going home and cleaning your closet, and like start
yeah.
there. Don't go out and try to tackle the whole planet and like changing the whole collect. No, go home, clean your clutter, take care of yourself, and when your stuff is all organized and aligned, maybe take on the challenge of
Yeah,
changing the planet.
yeah. That is the place to start, though. You start with yourself.
Right.
It's like, do you wear shoes or cover the surface of the earth with leather, like that kind of thing? But
Right.
it's or like we were saying too, it with the furniture. That's the thing with the stuff in the closet. It's like stuff, old pictures that you by no means want to hang up, but you don't want to throw out either. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like kind of hard to what to do with them, or
Right.
yeah, that kind of thing. But it's yeah, it's definitely part of it, and then the effects of color, even like I'll do. I teach various classes. I do like a monthly introduction to tarot reading class, and I do one. I've done it a couple of times. I call it color magic,
Mm.
and it's working with colors and kind of as they're related to the chakras, and
Right.
then you got the crystals associated with that, and but that does have to do with the color that you paint your room
Right.
or what you hang up. Maybe you rent, maybe it's just a lot of work to paint a room, so maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
easier to get new curtains and one of
Right.
those.
And
And
bring it in. Yeah.
but that is the thing too, the psychological effects of colors and how
Right. You
the
wouldn't.
individual relates to them. And
Yeah, I picked, blue for my bedroom because I'm thinking third eye, sleep, dream, that's what I'm
yeah,
doing in that space. But downstairs, like in my kids' playroom, I chose yellow because I'm like, okay, this is really active and, it's a sunny, playful thing. But as much as I love that, like I picked the gold couch to bring that color
Oh
in because I
yeah,
love it.
yeah,
But I was like, I don't know if I should paint the walls that because it might be too active.
yeah. Too
And so
energizing.
I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm trying to relax in the space. Like I can
right.
still do hints of gold, which I love. I like
Yeah.
gold, a little bit of gold in every room. But the overall theme is blue because this is mostly going to be
R-
to rest,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
the
know?
tranquil thing, the clear expression. Blue inspires confidence and trust.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like in a business sense, a lot of companies will use blue in their logo or uniforms. That's
Mm,
kind of like related to that. Red can be a bit intense. It can be passionate and fiery. It's a thing with like if a bar has a lot of red, there might be a tendency for fights or
fight, yeah.
something. Whereas the Kung Fu school, a lot of the stuff is painted red to have that martial, intense
Oh,
attitude.
yeah, the Mars energy coming out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's yeah, yeah, like green's a very tranquil, relaxing color, very healing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also a consideration with that, and that can even carry over into colors that you wear or
Right.
things like that. Maybe a certain relate with the Aries thing. I tend to wear a lot of red,
Yeah.
a lot of Aries energy, and
I didn't realize I was wearing a lot of red until I was like going through my images the other day, like on Instagram, because they're all together. I'm like, I'm wearing red a lot for someone that doesn't really think that I enjoy red as much, because sometimes red's very intense. I tend to use it the least in my paintings, and
yeah,
so it makes me think of blood sometimes.
yeah,
But
right, right,
anyways, it's funny. I'm like, there must be some unconscious aspect of me that's really, wanting to wear red. Maybe it's like to feel more protected when I'm out and about, or
yeah.
something. But
And even with the Mercury and Aries, right?
uh-huh.
That
Yeah.
was you too, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, because Aries, I'm just always thinking of myself.
Right.
I
You both
have
have
learned to
that.
channel that into not being selfish, but I was saying like the red is expression. Your clothing
Mm-hmm.
is a form of self-expression, so it's kind of like carries over to that.
Right, right. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do notice that the color I'm wearing can totally change. Like I went through a phase where I was wearing black all the time. And I like to wear black, honestly, for the most part.
yeah.
It's very neutral.
Mm-hmm.
But every now and then I'm like, if I'm trying to be like confident or, like secure, I might pick a different color because black's not necessarily it. And like black is like I don't get seen. I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
it's like keeps me in that outcast vibe,
Yeah, there's no reflection.
which
It's
is
almost like a
great.
camouflage on a thing. It's like, yeah.
And I feel like being Saturn dominant with my chart, I kind of tend to have that outcast role. But sometimes I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be like the hermit today. Maybe
Mm,
I need to shine today. And so I'm going to wear maybe some yellow or
yeah.
something that's going to be more radiant.
Right, like the Kundalini thing with white.
Right, which
Yeah.
I don't wear a lot of white. Even when I was
No.
doing Kundalini, I would wear it for specific classes. And sometimes I would do the turban and all of that. But I don't know. I guess I don't necessarily want everyone to see my auric field like that. Sometimes I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe not everyone needs to see this part of me.
And it's just hard to keep clean. I mean, you
It's
wear white, you're going
so
to instantly get it dirty. I am, yeah.
right, right. Yeah. So,
And speaking of the turban, I know in one of the recent episodes you were discussing the whole thing with hats and everything, and
mm-hmm.
I totally get that. Like I often wear a hat, and like you kind of get the energetic
It's like,
containment that comes
yes.
with it. Yeah, yeah, that does totally resonate though. The need for that and the practicality of keeping the weather off, whether it be shade or
Mm-hmm.
anything unpleasant. But yeah, I can totally see that.
Right. And in the wind, my acupuncturist at one point was like, you need to cover, so the wind. And I don't remember what issue I was dealing with, but that was one of her recommendations is like wear a scarf around your head while we're healing this because that
Yeah.
wind is actually like you need to keep your energy in right now.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that is a thing. I didn't even think about that with
I feel like there's so many connections to everything.
yeah, 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 stuff like that is all interrelated.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the acupuncture, I've just recently experienced acupuncture a couple of times for the first time, and I know someone who's a practitioner, and kind of just the stuff in the ears, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely helpful, and do a lot of self-applied acupressure kind of things. I
Yeah.
have points I stimulate on a regular basis. I'll sleep with this piece of quartz that kind of comes to a dull point and work the chakras and different energy points and meridians, and
Mm,
that's definitely a helpful little thing to throw in there. And that goes with a lot of the Taoist healing. Like there's different
right.
healing sounds for the internal organs and corresponding acupressure points to stimulate
Right.
while you're doing it.
Oh, I would love to do a whole episode on just the Chinese medicine stuff
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's so I don't I have a hard time integrating it myself, but working with a professional, I'm like, this is amazing. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why or how you know this, but like the benefits are just so wonderful that I would love to learn more. I mean, there's not a lot of places to learn about it in this area, but I might have to get my acupuncturist on the show sometime to
Yeah,
talk
that
about
would
it.
probably would be really cool because, like you said, it's not something that's taught. Like even the acupressure stuff, I mainly know from reading or different
Right.
videos or podcasts. I used to follow this guy. He's recently passed away. Stephen Russell, the Barefoot Doctor,
Mm,
and he was from England and wrote these series of books and videos and all that on kind of like a modern presentation of traditional Taoist and Chinese medicine stuff. And he used to have like way back early days of the internet, kind of like a website with a chat room and
mm-hmm.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And but I learned a lot of that just from his tutorials and books and things. And he just has like a nice modern way of presenting it. It's like we were saying with the I Ching, a lot of that stuff. So like esoteric
Right.
poetry, or like if you read the old Taoist books, it only deals is geared towards men. So it
Mm-hmm.
in no way like acknowledges women at all as far as like
Right.
specifics of body parts and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, there is a lot of that.
Right, right. Are there any other topics you want to cover before we
Yeah, we've been pretty much all over the place,
I
which
like
is like the way I am. So I'm good with that. Like I was saying, I offer tarot and I Ching readings. I practice Reiki, quantum energy healing, kind of like non-traditional Reiki, but it's conceptually like the same idea, that sort of thing. I'm available for that. I do work at the Sacred Owl and Salt Room in West Knoxville and Enchanted Blessings in Maryville. If I'm always available through their social media.
so you mostly dabble like in person, not you don't do the online too much or
No, not really. I would, but someone else would basically have to set it up. It's not my
right, right.
forte. And through either of those, in Enchanted Blessings or the Sacred Owl, I would do Zoom or FaceTime readings. If you contact me, we can do something through FaceTime. If someone wants to do that, I'm on
Okay.
Facebook as Gary Coppola or as Spearman's Mystic Chemistry. So I'm certainly up for that. It's just something I haven't pursued heavily,
Okay.
and
Awesome.
that's just a lack of technical finesse on my part.
Right. Well, I think there's people in that focus mostly on that, and then there's some people that do the in person. So
Oh
sometimes
yeah,
that's
yeah, and it's very popular and cool and lucrative and all that, and I'm not adverse to it. It's just I'm not.
there's not a need right now for it. With
Yeah, I generally don't have the patience to set it up or the technical thing, or I get frustrated easily with that, and then
mm-hmm.
it becomes a source of stress. So I just don't do it.
Right. All right. Well, definitely check him out if you're in Knoxville. Book a session or have a reading with him. Thank you so much for doing this episode with me. It's been so nice chatting and getting to know you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm just welcome the opportunity and glad to come out. It's a thoroughly enjoyable experience. I also offer yoga
Oh,
classes.
yeah.
I do a weekly class on Tuesday evenings at Enchanted Blessings, and typically ask for $10. And people in recovery, whatever you can afford, including nothing, is fine. If you show up, no one's going to get turned away. And probably after the holiday season, we'll start doing that at the Sacred Owl too. It's just nobody exercises this time of year, and everybody does in January. So,
Right. It's funny how that happens.
yeah.
All right. Well, perfect. Thank you so much. This
All
has
right.
been great.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. And thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.